What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another late night in the BrewLab with me, Lone Fox, your brewmaster-in-chief. And tonight, in the BrewLab, I'm coming at you with another episode of a spoiler talk. Loads, like a veritable truckload of cards to get through, because I have been watching Worlds and the content has been a little bit spotty. I haven't had enough time with all my family duties and whatnot to not only watch Worlds but also record brew texts and also spoiler talk episodes. It was all just kind of getting a little bit jumbled, so I apologize for the scheduling changes. Everything's going to go back to normal as of tomorrow, or as you're watching this. We'll go back to the usual scheduled upload times and whatnot, starting from tomorrow. So picking up where we left off, we just finished off reading the blue command, and then it went straight into just another wowzer. Yeah, like I said, loads to get through. Absolute boatload of cards to get through. Of course, all of these brown ones we're going to skip over, because now I have confirmed that these are not standard legal. So I don't really need to go through all the brown ones. So, Soul Partition. 2 mana, instant speed. A lot of these I have not looked at all. I've just had my eye on Twitter and things, but I haven't really been looking at these properly. So nice to go through them first off with you guys. Instant speed, exile target non-land permanent. For as long as that card remains exiled, its opponent may play it. A spell cast by an opponent this way costs 2 more to cast. It's almost like the thing that Elite Spellbinder did, but it did it when the thing was still in the opponent's hand. Now, like, they've already gotten the value off of it or whatever, but it's still really good. I think it's still really, really strong card. It reminds me of that card from Alchemy, the 3 mana little micro sweeper. Just puts everything there on the side, and then they can recast it. Not everything, but whatever it is that you... I don't know. I think this is going to definitely see some play. I can see myself playing this in some sort of like white mid-range control pile. Nice. Very nice. Then we've got Transmogrant's Crown, a 2 mana equipment with black down here. I like this, how they've done this. Like the artifacts are colorless, period. But then there's something in their cost, either the prototype or what have you, that sort of indicates what part of the color pie it should belong in. This one gives an equipped creature +2/+0. So if you're playing in a black deck, you're only equipping for 1 black mana. And then whenever the equipped creature dies, you draw a card. Whew. I don't know if it's quite ready to take the place of the Bankbuster, but I can definitely see myself playing a couple of these in my mono black aggro deck. Which it's been, there's people, diehards, that are still trying to keep it and this is my 2 cents about mono black, where it's at right now, until we see more spoilers. There's people that are diehards and that they were loving it so much when they still had Meathook in the format, that are playing it very much the same way with your Tenacious Underdogs, Graveyard Trespassers, Shieldred, Invoke Despair, and all of that stuff. Which is great. But the lack of a sweeper, they've usually just replaced it with either Karn, Silex, or just put more spot removal in, and you can feel the difference when you're playing against them. And the alternatives for me right now are either you go more into aggro and, get rid of certain things, put in more creatures and go the aggro path. But it's not quite there yet, and this Transmogrant's Crown might be something that it needs to get there. Or you go more the control route and cut all of the trespassers and things, and just put in more removal and more planeswalkers. So yeah, anyway, That's just my 10 cents on Mono Black's state right now. It's kind of in the flow between these two, and it'll be interesting to see how it shakes up. If it ends up being a better aggro deck or a better control deck. But the sort of mid-rangey thing that it had going on with the really versatile sweeper like Meathook is now gone. So anyway, the Stone Brain is the next card up. Another 2-mana legendary artifact. This one you can pay 2. Tap it, exile it, choose a card name, search target opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for up to 4 cards with that name and exile them. That player then shuffles, then draws a card for each card exiled from their hand this way, which is really good. It took me a few reads. This is one that I've seen already. Activate only as a sorcery. So there's another card that had a similar thing where, like, the opponent, I think it might even have been, oh my goodness, it was a staple blue counterspell that exiled things. I cannot remember the name now, but anyway, where depending on however many of those things that you actually exiled that were in their hand, then they draw cards, which is obviously bad, but the chances of that happening are pretty low. Usually they'll have already cast one of the thing that's in the yard. Maybe one's in their hand and the other 2 are in the library, so you get to give them in some cases a card, but the main card of their deck is now just gone. And you know, you can pretty much tell there's certain decks that rely on, like, getting one specific card down, and if you just take that out of their library on potentially turn 3, it's pretty damaging. So this, I think, is a real contender. Definitely sideboard, like, staple. Really strong card. Next up, we got Hercules Final Meditation. 7 mana, 4 and 3 blue. Instant speed. As long as it's not your turn, the spell costs 3 more to cast, so 10 mana. But if you're doing this on your turn, which I don't understand, I guess there's probably a reason for that I'm not catching here, but return all non-land permanents to their owner's hand, end the turn. It's like a uber bounce everything, plus, you know, when it says end the turn, it means exile all spells and abilities from the stack, so it's like a counter, the uber counter spell of all counter spells, triggered abilities, anything that's on the stack, gone. The player whose turn it is discards down to their maximum hand size, damage wears off, it just stops everything. Like, a lot of these expensive cards, I will find myself saying later on tonight, and I have said already during these episodes of Spoiler Talk, that seem to cost a lot. You're like, oh, well, sweet, we're going to have things that make power stones all over the place, and they're artifacts. Fine. But you can't use power stones to cast this. You're going to have actual mana. Yeah, I mean, I guess 10 mana. Let's see. I honestly don't have a really good take on this. It just seems crazy. There's definitely going to be some people using it in disgusting blue-white control decks. Or mono-blue of some kind. Next up, we got Daphna, the founder of Latinam. 2 mana, 2/1, legendary human artificer advisor. Return target artifact you control to its owner's hand. Or you can pay 3, tap it, copy target artifact spell you control. That's obviously very strong. We had that on the... oh my goodness, I'm forgetting all the names of the cards. As soon as they rotate out, my brain is so full of card names that I just like... The Ozolith? No? The Ozolith was that counters thing. You could copy stuff. It was a 4-drop. I really enjoyed playing it. That's the last time we had this copy artifact spell. and it's rotated out. It was probably better than this. They were both legendaries. This is much cheaper at 2 mana, but it's very easy to remove. I guess it's also quite nice to sort of like use it to save artifacts, like bounce artifacts, or those ones with prototype. You know, you maybe previously casted them for less, and they're out as their prototype, and then you finally get to the mana to recast them for their full cost. You want to maybe bounce it back to your hand and cast it again. I don't know. Could be interesting. We'll have to see. Seems a bit weak. Next up, we got Tornas. Okay, he's like a super important character in the story for those of you reading it. Of course, legendary. Human Artificer, of course. 3/5 in Simic for 5 mana. Whenever you cast a beast or bird creature spell, you may copy it, except that copy is an artifact in addition to its other types. I can't think of the birds and the beasts that we have right now that I can think of that are like, whoa, oh my god, I want to copy that. But probably more on the beast side. There could be some pretty busted things to do there, especially in like historic and whatever explorer. You know, like Elder Gargaroth is a beast. Oop, what did I do? Oh wow, my trackpad is active. Turn that off. Zoom in. Yeah, I don't know. Probably more like a commander thing, I guess. I don't think we'll be... Well, I mean, I'm sure at some point late in the format I'll be desperate for new brews and I'll try and make a Tornos Toymaker deck, but I'm not too sure that's going to be great in Standard. Next up, we got... This I've had a look at, and I've been thinking about all the different decks that you can make with Automaton, which we've been saying for months now. Like, oh, look, Brothers War's an artifact set. I bet you Automaton's going to get so much better. Yes, like already just from what has been spoiled now, I can tell you already it's way better. And it's just going to be about like figuring out what colors you're going to do it in. Like, because all these artifacts are colorless, but of course the spells that you're using to support the artifacts, the planeswalkers, and of course, as I've been saying, they're colorless, but they've got a like an additional cost to do something that's in another color, which shows which affinity they're with. And Clay Revenant is a black one, and it makes sense. It's like a zombie or a skeleton. They've always got something like this in the set. We just had one actually in black, because it enters the battlefield tapped, and you can return it from your graveyard to your hand. I wish it was to the battlefield. That makes it a little bit worse, honestly. And for 3 mana, but a cheap 1 mana thing in your automaton deck that's going to be black based kind of artifact thing. Trigger your automaton every time you bring it back. It's a 1/2. I don't know. But you get my point. There's going to be all of these new artifact decks. It's the next like month of thumbnails and titles on content creators you watch are all going to be like aggro Izzet artifacts, artifact Azorius control, as Rakdos artifact sacrifice. It's all going to be like artifacts, and it's going to be interesting to see which one's the best. Obviously, Automaton fits more into like an aggro strategy, and I've already got like a Selesnya idea, which brings us to this card in a second, but anyway, more on that in a second. Next up, we got Giant Growth. This has been around for so long. Like, it's one of the original cards, and it just keeps getting a reprint. It's probably pretty okay in limited, but I doubt it'll see any play, really. +3/+3 is good, but meh. Then we've got Mishra's Juggernaut. 5 mana common. 5/3 with Unearth 6. Attacks each turn if able. Has Trample. That's it. Meh. Draft chaff. Next up, we got Overwhelming Remorse. Cost 1 less to cast for each creature in your graveyard. Okay. I was already looking at the cost, like, okay, 5 mana. But exile creature or planeswalker for, you know, even if you've got 1, 2 creatures in your graveyard, that brings it down to 3 mana, exile, instant speed, creature, planeswalker. I think that's actually deceptively good. Like, it just depends which, you know, there's got to be some sort of self-mill, you know, sack, you know, where you're going to have some creatures in the graveyard sooner rather than later. Then you might run, like, 2 of this in the deck. And anyway, at 5 mana, like, still, exile planeswalker is pretty decent. I like it. I think that might end up being a little bit of a sleepy, like, secretly very good common for the set, depending on how much, like, graveyard stuff is going on. You know, Clay Revenant over here, in case in point. Next up, we got Stern Lesson. I like where this is going. Like, it really continues to prove my point about there. It's going to be like artifacts, and then there'll be all the various things: artifact control, artifact mid-range, artifact sack, artifact blah blah blah. This in like an Azorius or Izzet or something artifact control deck, I think looks pretty good. Draw 2, then discard a card. So draw 1 and filter, and then create a tap Power Stone token. So you're like ramping for your, like, you're going to cast your next big artifact or something on turn 4, make it a 5 or 6 drop artifact. And then you also drew a card and put some, you know, you're going to probably be wanting to put stuff into the graveyard because of Unearth. I think this might actually also be deceptively really good in the format. Instant speed, make a Power Stone. Let's see how good these Power Stones end up being and how much they're necessary. Next up, we've got Tocassia's Amulet. This might be the one they were referring to in Marrow's teaser. 5 mana 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, gain 2 life. See, like, again, this probably like terrible if you have to like build up to mana normally, and you know, in turn 5 you play this thing. But like, if you've been making little Power Stones along the way, all along, and you know, casting one of these doesn't even tap your proper mana for other interaction and things, then, you know, and it can be unearthed. Gain 2 life, 4/4. I mean, it's probably not going to see any play in standard, but I'm just making a point about the Power Stones. But anyway, going back to the automaton. Guillotine Dissident. Non-legendary, finally. There's been all these legendaries. This is just like a typical Celestia. Right now we've got the Celestia guy that's in the enchantments decks that reduces the cost of enchantments by 1. Typical thing. You know, play it on turn 2, it costs a Celestia and does something. There was a one before this that cared about it, +1/+1 counters as well. That's now, his name is not coming to me from previous rotation, but yeah, there seems to always be this like 2-drop. There's even Catilda right now. That's like the 2-drop Celestia. It's always like the main signpost thing for the one sort of archetype. And I, for one, think that this, alongside Automaton and a few other cards that I'll bring up later, and of course we've got the Celestia Painland now, are going to make for a really aggressive, sweet to play, like Celestia artifact aggro, artifacts matter aggro deck in the coming weeks, and I cannot wait to test it out. But whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature you control. See where it's going with the automaton. Nice. You know, probably play this guy on turn 2, hope it sticks. Turn 3, you play the automaton and another creature. You know, another artifact. Maybe an Iron Apprentice. Oh my goodness. I just kind of want to get to the next card, which kind of goes with that, but we'll continue to just go through the load. Next up, we got 2 mana, go for the throat, destroy target non-artifact creature. Wow. Okay, like, think of Infernal Grasp. Does the same thing. It's only creature only, doesn't do planeswalkers or anything else. And it's 2 mana, and you take 2 damage. And how like impossible that is to cast in the late game in some matchups and stuff. How, you know, but it's just the best that we have right now. Is this gonna overtake Infernal Grasp? Are there enough artifact creatures to remove that are going to be problematic that this becomes unplayable? Kind of like we had that one that said you can only kill like a non-demon angel or dragon, and it was like the dragon set right after that. You know what I mean? Is the artifact creature type going to be so important that this becomes unplayable? Otherwise, I think there's still going to be just plenty of Rafines and things hanging around and Sheoldreds that this is suddenly like just better than Infernal Grasp. I don't know, maybe just like a 2 of alongside Infernal Grasp. We'll have to see, but otherwise, pretty sweet. Next up, we got Argosian Opportunist. Probably getting through a little bit of draft chaff stuff here. When it ETBs, create a tap Power Stone token, 3/2. Reminds me of the oh my goodness, the thief something that comes into play, makes a treasure token, and it's a 3/3 vigilance trample that we have in green right now. I think that's just strictly better, but again, depends on how important these Power Stones end up being. Next up, Yoshin Medic, 1/4 lifelink. Human Soldier Cleric. Probably mostly draft chaff. Third Path Savant. Pay 7, draw 2. Yeah, these are all pretty nonsense. Oh, but this one I've seen something on Twitter. Bit of reunion. This one seems a little bit more playable. 2 mana enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you may discard a card and then you draw 2. Pretty nice. Like, pretty nice, honestly. You just draw 1 and draw 2, discard your worst card, or put something that you want to discard into the yard. Like, pretty nice, man. And then it just sits there, and then at some point when you want it, you can pay 1, sack it, and give a creature haste until end of turn. How many times have we said like, oh my goodness, if this thing just had haste or whatever? Like, I think that's really good. Even something as simple as like giving Fable of the Mirror Breaker, like, finally turns into Kiki Jiki, and then it still has to sit there for another turn before it, you can start using it. No, now you just pay 1 more and give your Fable haste the turn it comes into play. Or, I don't know, the red Defiler. That is great, but it's not quite as good as the Thundering Raiju because it's, doesn't have haste. Maybe, no, I don't know. Seems fairly good to me. Of these 4 commons, this is the red one's definitely the best one. Then we've got Gaia's Cursor. 5 mana, 4/5, uncommon. Whenever it attacks, if there are 3 or more creatures cards in your graveyard, draw a card. I can see why. Probably for limited, this is going to be pretty sweet. Like, really hard to remove, really hard to trade with in battle. Draws your card. Yeah, I think not going to see any standard play, but definitely pretty good. I can see why they gave it uncommon for draft. Next up, I've made a post about this on Twitter, and I actually made a mistake and I had to recant my statement and delete half the post. But regardless, with all of these cards, there's a card that we have now in standard from Kamigawa that's like exile target artifact or creature or something when it enters the battlefield, or that you control, and when it enters the battlefield, it comes back with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So all of these prototype cards, okay, it's a blue instant that I just talked about from Kamigawa. All of these prototype cards You can cast for their prototype cost for less, hit them with that card, they'll leave the battlefield, come back again, and have an additional +1/+1 counter on it. And you can do that, much sooner than you would usually be able to, because, even the Skitterbeam Battalion has 9 casting cost. So, you can do this on turn 5 with prototype, turn 6. You hit it with that card, which now I can't remember, but you'll have to go follow me on Twitter. But it's a card from Neon Dynasty, and unfortunately they put that little bit of text there that says if you cast it, so you won't get the ETB trigger off of it. But there's other ones that don't say that, where you do get the ETB trigger, and we'll get to them. But still, regardless, you play this on turn 5, you get 3 2/2s. Then on turn 6, you do that thing to it. It leaves the battlefield, comes back as a 4/4, as a 5/5 trample or haste, and you don't get to copy it, unfortunately. Or just, in some sort of a red, with red in it, rampy deck, maybe Timur or something like that, where you actually get to 9 mana in the late game and you play it for 9 mana, then you get 12 power on the battlefield with trample and haste. It's pretty bonkers, and again, another payoff for all those power stones that you'll be creating with your Karn and etc. You should be able to get this down pretty early, regardless of the tricks with the exile instant speed thing, and then just top deck another one in the late game and just dump it for 9. 12 power trample haste. Just swing. Yeah, oh my goodness, that's super broken. I can see why they had to put, if you cast it in here. Otherwise, there's cards that can just flicker this the turn it comes into play, or the very next one, and just would have been too broken. But still, very strong card, and amazing art. I can't wait to play with these prototypes. They're some of the ones that I'm the most excited about. Next up, we got Tocassia's Welcome. This just reminds me of the vampire, welcoming vampire, again with the welcome in the line. Whenever one or more creatures with mana value 3 or less enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This ability only triggers once each turn, so very different if you think about it. The welcoming vampire says with power 2 or less. This is mana value 3 or less, so there's loads of creatures with mana value 3 or less that have more than 2 power. So maybe, I don't know, maybe just play 1 or 2 alongside your welcoming vampire in some sort of white mid-rangey pile, or I don't know, Orzhov deck. I guess that's pretty good, but I just don't know yet. There's some really good 3-drops in white, in enchantment decks and everything, a Ganjo, blah blah. Maybe later on in its standard life. For now, I think there's better things to do, because this just gives you an enchantment. The welcoming vampire is on a flying body. It can block and attack and stuff. This just sits there and gets removed. Next up, this is I think, really good card. You could just play 4 of these on the top end of your white weenies deck. Some people have been yeah, I don't know. It's a better, a worse Coco, a better, or a cheaper version of Storm the Festival, and all those comparisons make sense because it's 3 white and X. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. That happens regardless, which in and of itself is pretty crazy. And then you put up to X artifacts and or creature cards with mana value 3 or less. So most of your stuff in white is happening in 3 or less, as you know. Adeline, yada yada. The vast majority of the crazy, especially in aggro, happens in 3 or less. And I have a feeling there's going to be some artifacts that are going to come out that matter, etc. Unfortunately, this doesn't hit enchantments. So it's going to be in a specifically, like, it's not the typical, because there's, you know, one Wedding Invitation is like the most played white card, and you know, it's not going to hit that, but it's not for that type of deck. I think like white aggro, maybe the Soldiers deck even, that's going to be very good, as we'll see later again tonight with this episode. The Soldiers deck is looking crazy. This might be better in something like that, where it's just mostly just creatures in your whole deck, and this at the top end. And you can cast it for like 5-6 mana. And out of the top 7 cards of your library, you're putting 3 things on the battlefield. Wowzer. I think it's really good. Let's see how it ends up shaking out. Maybe it's, I don't know. I think at some point in its life in Standard, this card's going to be super busted. It reminds me of Collected Company or what have you, and that's always just ridiculous. Putting 3 things on the battlefield in one go, albeit at sorcery speed, is bueno. Next up, this card goes with, this is one I wanted to talk about with regards to the Yotian Descendant and the Automaton Clay Champion. Okay, you can just play this for 4 colorless, right? But depending on whether you cast this for, like, let's say you, in an ideal situation, if you don't have like 6 mana or 8 mana, but you're just playing this on turn 4, and you've tapped 2 green and 2 white to cast it, it'll enter the battlefield as a 5/5 that also puts a +1/+1 counter on 2 other creatures. So if you've got like even just 2 automatons in play, you'll be putting a creature and a +1/+1 counter on it because of just casting the Clay Champion. And then when it enters the battlefield, you put an additional +1/+1 counter on them as well. And it enters the battlefield as a 5/5 on turn 4. If you've got 2 green, 2 white. And then it just scales like ridiculous. Late game, you top deck this thing. I'm assuming you can use the Power Stones to pay the X. But, you know, you want to probably play this in just like a Celestia, like aggro-y tokens. Oh my god, I can't wait. Even just play this out on turn 6 and pay like 3 green, 3 white or something. Oh my goodness. No, sorry. You'd have to go 4 green, 2 white, or like 4 white, 2 green. Then it actually doubles up the effect. But you see where I'm going. Celestia, Artifacts Matter, Automaton, this guy. And it's not over, because each color, like you see the Skitterbeam Battalion here, is like in red and Artifact. You'll see there's the one for green and the one for white that also kind of fit. We'll get to them in a moment. But next up, we got Ashnod. And this is going to wrap up the 29th. Ashnod, the Flesh Mechanist. A 1 mana 1/1 Death Touch. Interesting. Legendary creature, Human Artificer. Whenever it attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, you create a tapped Power Stone token. So they'll probably just block as soon as possible, and you might get to make 1 Power Stone. But then you can exile a creature card from your graveyard, create a tapped 3/3 colorless zombie artifact creature token. So I guess a little bit of value in the early game, maybe you get a few Power Stones, and then you get one in the late game, and you can use those Power Stones to pay for the activation of this 5 mana activated ability to make zombie artifacts every, opponent's end step. Cool. Cool. Let's see. Don't really know yet. Could be good. Dig the art. Next up, we got Fade from History. 4 mana green rare sorcery. Each player who controls an artifact or enchantment creates a 2/2, just a 2/2 green bear creature token. Then destroy all artifacts and enchantments. I think they needed to do that. a green sweeper for artifacts and enchantments that leaves behind a bear. Yeah, that's gonna see play. I get a feeling that it's gonna be these artifact decks are gonna be so strong that there's gonna have to be some way to deal with them when certain other sweepers can't. And yeah. Boop. And you'll probably often be left with a little bear yourself. There's each player. And you're both left as a little 2/2 bear, and you can... then there was some commander stuff, and we skipped straight back into the action. This day. I did have a little bit of a sneak peek at this stuff myself. First up, we got Thran, Spyder. I'm going to do a little bit quicker. We're going a bit long with this one. I've got a deck tech to record. Thran, Spyder. 3 mana, 2/4 with reach. When it enters the battlefield, you and your opponent each create a tapped Power Stone token. Okay. Pretty decent blocker for 3 mana, 2/4 with reach. That's pretty nice. But then you have to pay 7, and I guess you're using Power Stones to do that. As you see this theme of like expensive activated things that you're going like, normally, but probably with all these Power Stones lying around, they've done this on purpose to give us something to actually use them on. This one you pay 7, look at the top 4 cards of your library, you may reveal an artifact card among them, put it into your hand. Put the rest onto the bottom of your library. Okay, I mean, pay 7, tutor an artifact, find an artifact. Scry for an artifact in the top 4. I guess. Meh. We'll have to see how important. There might be some like combo deck that like really wants this bunch of artifact token things lying around, Power Stones, pay the 7, still have loads of mana left open to cast the thing, and it's the game ending thing. I don't know. Seems a bit weak to me. Next up, though, we have a real interesting one. This one I'm super excited for. There's a little bit of synergy with blue and white and soldiers. And there's a card that we haven't played with yet in Dominaria United that is makes soldiers whenever you cast your second spell or something like that. So like some sort of like tempo soldiers with the soldier lord that we have already. This seems pretty cool. Could even go maybe Jeskai, even though the mana's a bit weird. We could definitely try it, because you could play with the Secluded Courtyard and you wouldn't need the Triome, and you can just use all the Pain lands, because now we've got them in all the color combinations. So you could play like three color aggro decks a little bit more efficiently now, because the 3 color aggro decks that we've tried with the Triome lands, Selesnya, Grixis, all the ones that got Triome in Streets of New Capenna, you find yourself playing the Triome on turn 1 instead of a creature, which is what you want to be doing in an aggro deck. And so the only 3 color aggro decks that worked in that standard were tribal ones that didn't need to play, like Naya humans, that didn't need to play the Triomes. You just played Secluded Courtyard. So I think like a Jeskai Soldiers with the soldier deck that I've just shown you, there's the Boros one, the Soldier Lord, Harbin here, and you've got already Talia, Brutal Cathar, and all the other. I think it could be something really good coming. And this is a goodie. You can slam it on like turn 5, potentially, or 4, or whatever. As long as it's like, when you're going to do it, you're planning on attacking with 5 or more soldiers, which you can do. There's loads, like even just the Reinforcements card or something, the one with Flash, makes 2 1/1 soldiers. There's ways of getting loads of soldiers down quickly. And then whenever you're attacking with 5 or more soldiers, creatures you control. So if you have other things that aren't soldiers alongside attacking with, everything gets +1/+1 and gains flying. And I love that it happens like, it's kind of like that deck that I made with the humans and Sigarda's summons, that gives everything with +1/+1 counters flying, and they become angels or whatever. Where like I had it triggering with the fight rigging, and it just kind of happens before there's a chance for the opponent to do anything. You swing, and I was gonna block some of that stuff. Choop, suddenly everything gets bigger and has flying, and I think that's gonna make for a really cool like combo finish in certain maybe soldier aggro pile or tempo pile, and I can't wait to try that out. Then we got the Fall of Krug, 6 mana. Choose target opponent. Destroy target land that player controls. The Fall of Krug deals 3 damage to that player and 1 damage to each creature they control. Meh. Like, pretty cool flavor-wise and stuff, but that's really expensive to just destroy land, really. Like, I don't know. Probably quite trashy. Next up, we got the Hall of Tagzin. A rare land that isn't, you know, one of the dual lands. That's always a bit painful for the budget gamers if they end up being crucial. Okay, obviously just taps for a colorless. You can also pay 1, tap it, add for, okay, mana of any color. Or you can pay 4 and tap it and create a Power Stone token. Okay, that's pretty nice little mana sink. I guess you play like a 1-of. Whenever you have nothing else to do with your Power Stone tokens, you can use the Power Stone tokens to pay for the activation of your Hall of Tagzin to make another Power Stone token, and kind of just exponentially, you know, you just do it at the end step when you hold up your counter spells or whatever, or flashy artifact that you're going to cast, and then you just, when it's going to get to your turn, you know, slowly make Power Stones with your Hall of Tagzin. I think that's probably, yeah, I can see why that's rare, especially in this coming set. Might end up being like a 2-of in your decks. Be interesting to see where this one goes. Next up, we got a swath of these prototypes. And that makes me excited. Because even the common ones seem playable in a sort of, yeah, I've got some ideas. I won't let everything away. I want you guys to tune in on day 1, and also for the early access event. I've got something up my sleeves that I don't want to unleash yet, other than the blue instant that I just mentioned earlier from Kamigawa. But there's other ideas. The Depth Charge Colossus, 9 mana, 9/9. You can see the trend: 10 mana, 10/10. But the prototype is 6 mana, and you get a 6/6 with. Doesn't untap during your untap step, so it's like really big and it does really big swing, but then you have to wait a whole turn before it untaps. Or you can pay 3 mana and untap it. So you add energy if it untaps, if you just give it a little oomph. And then it's a 9/9 if you just pay the full 9 for it. Meh. Probably the one I'm the least excited about from the common cycle. There's one in common, one in rare, and one in mythic, with prototype for each kind of like color, as far as I've seen. And this one's the one I'm the least excited about. But it's in blue. No surprises. Next up, we got the Rust Goliath. This one's obviously much better. It's got reach and trample. So you can do the trick. You know, you play this on turn 5. You play some kind of flicker effect. It doesn't have an ETB, so they didn't have to put that line of text. It says if it's cast or whatever. It's just that you play it on turn 5, on turn 6, you flicker it, and you get a 10/10 reach trample. Or, you know, you do it at the end of the opponent's turn or something to flicker it, and then you untap with a 10/10 reach trample, swing in. This one I can see myself trying to cheat into play with all sorts of... you know, artifact stuff that we're going to be doing. Power Stones and Teferis, untapping your Celestises, and we'll try this one out. The trample is really nice. The 10/10, really nice. Arcane Proxy. This is the mythic one in blue. This one has the internet in an uproar. And I guess I can see why. You can pay 3 mana for a 2/1. And when it ETBs, if you cast it, so this one they had, again, otherwise it would be too busted. You exile target instant or sorcery card with mana value less than or equal to its power from your graveyard. Copy that card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. So on turn 3, you cast this and you can recast your Impulse or your Consider or your Fading Hope or something. And just like that, it's already pretty insane. And then on turn 7, you can recast your Big Score, your Memory Deluge, or I don't know, whatever. Importantly, you can't, put your, you can't do, it's not Flash, so you can't like recast your counter spells in a control deck. So maybe as a couple of in some sort of tempo, is it artifacts deck, which is going to be one of the best ones in my opinion. It's the one that's got the most support already. More on that in the next coming days. As I kind of I'm going to do a little bit of light theory crafting during episodes of Brewing With, where we look at the artifact stuff we have already and seeing how it's going to benefit from incorporating some of the cards that have already been spoiled. I've been at it on Moxfield. I've put up a few brews already, but they still haven't put all the cards in. Next up, we've got the Temporal Anchor. The only colored artifact in the set, apparently. I watched the whole panel during Worlds. This is the only one that's actually blue. And their thing was this is the one card from like the present day timeline, because Teferi is like now, but he's going back in time to the Brothers' War. So there's a few cards that are like, set now, and this is one of them, the Temporal Anchor. It seems to be the time machine that Teferi is using to travel or whatever. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 2. Whenever you choose to put one or more cards at the bottom of your library while scrying, exile that many cards from the bottom of your library. During your turn, you may play cards exiled with Temporal Anchor. Really crazy things. I don't know. Like, you can see, like, that's obviously nuts, but it's just 6 mana in like a heavily blue deck, and you need to then also put in all the stuff that scries. You can't put your counter spells down there because you can't cast that stuff, like, I don't know. It'll change the whole way you're scrying. You have to like put the good stuff that you want to cast in your bottom of your library, because then you're going to get to cast it, and then put the counter spells and the instant speed stuff that you want to cast during your opponent's turn at the top. You know what I'm saying? Like it kind of flips the way you're scrying on its head. I can see CGB doing something silly with that, but it's not my type of stuff. Next up, Urza's Silex. So now Karn and Urza both have a Silex. 3 mana. Legendary artifact. Okay, so let's start from the top. You can pay 2 and 2 white, tap it, exile it. Each player chooses 6 lands they control, destroy all other permanents. So you just sort of put it there as like this ticking time bomb that you're like, okay, well, this is just going to sit here. It's very much like Karn Silex to me. When Urza's Silex is put into exile from the battlefield, you may pay 2. If you do, search your library for a Planeswalker card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. So, okay. You keep your lands and you get a Planeswalker that you'll probably get to cast right away when you do this on, like, I don't know, turn 7, something. Pay 4, you still have, I don't know. Seems a bit, these types of sweepers are weird to me. They're like, just sit there, but it takes out your stuff as well. So I don't see like which deck wants to run that, because it will also kill your Planeswalkers. So you can't even, like the traditional like control deck that like, doesn't matter if I run sweepers because I'm not playing any creatures, but these sweepers also take out your Planeswalkers. So like, what else are you winning the game with? In some sort of like spells deck that you're just burning the opponent or something, like the current Grixis Invoke Despair deck. sure, but this has got white in the mana. So, like, I just don't see it. It's weird. But there's probably going to be this, like, artifacts, planeswalkers, Azorius deck because of the Azorius Urza planeswalker, and we've got Teferi that right now that untaps artifacts. That, you know, it seems like there's going to be a pretty good Azorius control artifacts deck, and maybe this goes in there as like a fail-safe, like a 2 of or a 1 of. Like, you just put it there and hope that you don't ever need to use it, but if you do, at least you've got your lands and your freaking planeswalker. Next up, talking about planeswalkers. This one's got weird, like, art problems. I'm not sure what happened here, but I had a good read on this one on Twitter. Oh, wow. Super sick. Is it Planeswalker Saheeli? It's a, you know, recurring Planeswalker. We've seen this ones before. It's usually in artifact synergies. This one is no exception. +1, scry 1, you may tap an untapped artifact you control. If you do, draw a card. So, like, you just have these power stones lying around. You're not only drawing a card, you get to also scry 1 and add loyalty to your Planeswalker. Doesn't seem terrible to just use a power stone in that way. Or you can -2, create 2 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying. They gain haste until end of turn. Can be like potentially game-ending stuff, you know? You just keep pumping out these little flyers. And then the -4, which is obviously really easy to get to. You'll just play it on turn. You play it on turn 4, +1 it. The next turn you could straight away already -4. And then you get an emblem that says that whenever artifact creatures you control get +1/+1. Wait, sorry. All artifact creatures you control get +1/+1, and artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. I think that's like pretty bonkers. Like, pretty bonkers. And I cannot wait to play with this card. Like, it's just the kind of thing that I enjoy. So, like, easy to activate planeswalkers that are pretty cheap, and on curve with, like, stuff that I've already been tinkering with before we got Brothers War. Like I've been saying, the Izzet artifact aggro deck is probably, with the automaton, of course, is set to be probably one of the better ones. I'll show you in the next couple days. You'll have to stay tuned. This is going too long. We've still got quite a bit to get through. Where was I? Portal to Phyrexia. 9 mana. Artifact. Not legendary. So, okay, I guess you could have 2 of these in play. It's insane. I've actually read this one already. When Portal to Phyrexia enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices 3 creatures. Okay, imagine dropping that on a commander board, first of all. But, like, even in standard, each opponent sacks 3 creatures. It's very expensive, obviously. But then at the beginning of your upkeep, you put a target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It's a Phyrexian in addition to its other types. Especially considered the next set is all going to be on Phyrexia in February of next year. And, like, the fact that we'll be able to use these Power Stone tokens to probably get this down much sooner than turn 9. And it doesn't specify which graveyard. Maybe the opponent's got nothing interesting, but you've been, like, self-milling things, like those big-ass, you know, things, these things. And you just start plopping them on the graveyard, you know. And it just keeps happening. It's not just for the 3 times. It's like, every upkeep, you put a creature from your graveyard onto the battlefield. So you just keep exiling stuff, you know, discarding stuff, and then coming back every upkeep. That with the Mishra deck, where it's going to be like aggro artifacts going quick. Just maybe like a 2 of in the top end. If there's ways to make Power Stones, maybe you can drop this on, you know, earlier as some sort of win more. I don't know. It just seems really cool. And, like, when Phyrexian is probably going to end up being an important creature type in the next year or so. Seems pretty bonkers to me. Next up, this one's got the internet in an uproar. Diabolic Intent. 2 mana, sorcery, black. As an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature. Typical black stuff, but then you search your library for any card, put that card into your hand, and shuffle. So it's like a demonic tutor, or, you know, just a tutor effect that only requires you to sack a creature. That's the only downside for 2 mana. I can see why people are tripping. It's going to be good. We've got right now Dig Up. It's one of the cleave cards from Crimson Vow. That's 4 mana to do the same. And we've got the second chapter of Gix, the Cruelty of Gix. Those are pretty much our only 2 like real tutor cards in standard right now. So now there's another one that's 2 mana at sorcery speed that you can play in like a sack deck. I think it's probably gonna, almost certainly gonna see some play. Yeah, very strong effect, obviously, and the fact that, you know, usually you pay life, like in the Cruelty of Gix, like you know, or you have to pay more. In this case, it's just sack a creature. You can have a little whatever, little artifact dork 1/1 thing lying about that you want to sacrifice for other synergies, and you get to do that. That's, you know, that's pretty bonkers. Next up, we got another 4 mana, like double red enchantment. I'm thinking of Stasia Uprising. This one at the beginning of your upkeep. Exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So it's like the same effect as the Urabrask. No, you get an addition. You're basically exiling one, and you get your draw step. Additional stuff to do with your red cards in in like a red maybe burn deck or something. At the beginning of your end step, if you didn't play your card from exile this turn, you create a tap Power Stone. So I like that. There's that little redundancy. Like if you can't cast it, you don't have the mana for it, whatever, which is always a feel bad in those situations because it just ends up in the exile. At least you get a Power Stone out of it. So, you know, I think that's actually not terrible, and I can't wait to test it out. I can't wait to see like what deck Wizards is saying. Like if we print this card, that means it fits somewhere, and I can't wait to figure out where that is, because it seems like a pretty cool effect. It's like an Urabrask thing. Imagine you had Urabrask as well on turn 5, and every turn on your beginning of your upkeep, you exile 2 cards off the top of your library, and you draw a card. Just gives you like so many more options of things to do. Then we've got Hajar. That's sick art. Loyal Bodyguard, a Gruul soldier, Gruul human soldier. Interesting. You can sack him. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains indestructible until end of turn. So we've got a few of these right now in standard. There's the 1 mana white one that requires the thing to have a +1/+1 counter on it, the Olimbok something. We've got the Selfless Samurai guy, and our Hajar, where you sack and give indestructible. That's pretty cool. Then it's legendary, so like it's okay. Just play another one. It makes it a little bit more okay to play like 4 of maybe. And the +1/+0 isn't terrible. The creature types are potentially relevant, and the 2 mana 3/3 isn't bad either. Maybe my Naya Soldiers deck with Mirror Box will finally have a good, I don't know. Interesting. Next up, we got the Stasis Coffin. 3 mana legendary artifact. Pay 2, tap it, exile it. You gain protection from everything. Oh, this was the one from Marrow's teaser. You gain protection from everything until your next turn. Cool. But you gain. So it'll be just, you know, things that say target opponent. Can't do that in response to or whatever. But I guess, you know, if it's like, good example would be, especially having watched Worlds and Nathan's fantastic win. By the way, so stoked I like recorded that and uploaded it before he won. And the Grixis deck that I also went undefeated with on my video You know, beat the freaking. Oh my goodness, what a match. Anyway, something like Invoke Despair that says target opponent, da 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 da. And you maybe know it's even in the opponent's hand. He's revealed it, or you just know it's coming next. And you pay 2, tap this thing on your turn, sack it, and gain protection from everything. They can't target you with Invoke Despair until your next turn. Gives you 1 more turn to draw a counter spell, whatever, do your next thing. So, I don't know. Maybe like sideboard tech against certain things. Right now, I don't know where this would find a home in Standard, but it is a cool and strong effect. Next up, this one is interesting. This one I've had a good look at already on Twitter. It's had a few of my friends in an uproar. Liberator, Urza's Battle Thopter. Okay, it's a 1/2 legendary Thopter. It's got flash. It's got flying. You may cast colorless spells and artifact spells as though they had flash. Okay? This even in your freaking automaton deck. Whenever we needed like good 3-drop artifacts, like it was desperate. The situation was desperate in those decks. It was just like Bankbuster, all this good stuff, automaton turn 2, and then the terrible 3-drop. What's it called? The Circuit Mender. I gain 2 life and sit on the battlefield. Draw you a card. This is what I'm talking about. Like, whenever you cast a spell, if the amount of mana spent to cast that spell is greater than the Liberator, so anything more than 3 mana, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. So you're flashing in your Surge Hacker mechs. Oh my goodness, just this has got me excited. And it gets bigger, and it's got flying, and then the static effect, flashing in your artifacts. I cannot wait to try this one. Super duper hyped about this card. I think 3 mana, it needed to be on 3. The 2-drop slots 2 packed with all your like speeder uppers and enablers and card draw and stuff. This is good for artifact decks. We needed like rare, good, playable 3-drops, and I think this will be like a 2 or a 3 of. Can't wait to play it. Next up, Tokasia, Dig Site Mentor in Band colors. 4 mana for a legendary human artificer. It's a 4/3, but then you gotta pay. And of course, you can use your Power Stone tokens to do this. The Power Stones tap for mana of any color as long as. Oh no, it only adds colorless. So no, this is just really expensive. You can use 2 Power Stones for the colorless. The rest is you need to have 6, 2 band, a double band. Exile it, and then from your graveyard. So obviously this is happening like it's already died, and it's in your graveyard. You got this back from the dead mode where you pay all of this and return any number of target artifact cards with total mana value 10 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okay, I mean, that's obviously pretty cool. It's really expensive, but in some sort of like Bant artifacts control ramp, which is kind of where Bant is at. Like, it's a rampy but more control-y than just pure Simic. It's just like Azorius with ramp, if that makes sense. So maybe opponent's been killing all your stuff, or you're milling your own things or whatever, and if they kill Tokasia, everything's in the yard, and then at some point just go bring it all back and have some cool like EDB triggers, or bring back some big of these big guys. Mana value 10 or less. Maybe just bring one of these back. I don't know. We'll have to see. Not too excited about Tokasia right now. And last card for October 30th is Loran of the Third Path. 3 mana, 2/1 Vigilance, human artifact. Artificer. Legendary. When it enters the battlefield, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. You and target opponent each draw a card. Okay. Okay. You made... I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Meh. Not very hyped on this. Even like design-wise, it's a bit meh. Then there's more commander stuff. We can skip over that. And we've got the final little batch to get through. My throat is highly parched. Fortunately, many of them are these brown things that we can just skip over. So let's just get right into it. So it's done and Dunskies, and I can go grab a good drink. So we've got Combat Thresher. Thresher? Seems pretty cool. It's like some sort of, wow, like imagine getting threshed up by that. It's got Prototype. So this is the white uncommon from the Prototype cycle. And it enters the battlefield as a 1/1 for 3 mana. But it's got double strike. And when it ETBs, you draw a card. So for 3 mana, draw a card, you get a 1/1 double strike. That's not terrible. That's really not terrible. And then if you flicker it, it's not one of those that say if it was cast, you know? Because it seems ridiculous to pay 7 mana for a 3/3 double strike. It's only such a small little increment in power and toughness for essentially the same card. So this is begging to be flickered. And I could see where I could do that already. Oh my goodness. My brewing juices are just... Ooh, give me the cards, give me the cards. But yeah, you're never going to cast this for 7. You're going to find a way to flicker it or cheat it into play. But then, you know, double strike, 3/3, draw a card. Hell yeah. It's not terrible. Then we've got the rare blue one. Teresian Mindbreaker. Whenever it attacks, defending player mills half their library rounded up. What? Oh, no, okay, no, this one isn't the Prototype one. This is the rare Unearth from the cycle. So there's going to be one in each by the looks of things. Unearth one. Here's the uncommon red Unearth one. So we still haven't seen the... Oh, yeah, we did see the blue Prototype rare. We just... Oh, no, that was... Was it rare? This one? No, that's Mythic. So, yeah, we still have to see the blue Prototype rare. But this one's the Unearth one. So whenever it attacks, and it can attack quite willy-nilly as a 6/4, like, it doesn't do anything when it ETBs. So most probably, as you're not going to be getting to 7 mana very soon, unless you top deck this in the late game, what you'll be doing with like cards like Mishra or Urza, most probably the uncommon one, or other cards that allow you to just discard, right? We've got the one from Kamigawa that's like draw 2, discard unless you discard an artifact or whatever. There's plenty of draw and discard in blue. And you discard this, and then on turn 4, you unearth it, and all the unearthed cards, when they enter the battlefield, they have haste, and you exile it at the beginning of your next end step. So you just unearth it on turn 4, 6/4 with haste, swings in, defending player mills half their library rounded off. That is bonkers, mate. I'm going to hate this thing. I'm going to hate this thing, and so are you. I can guarantee it. Easy, like just mill it into your graveyard. Plenty of ways of doing that between turn 1 and turn 4. And then you just unearth it, swing in, mill half your library. And probably get in for 6 as well. And you don't really care if it does or doesn't. Like, you know, it's just added bonus. Maybe you take down their biggest creature with it, but you've already milled half their freaking library. Hi caramba. Okay, maybe mill, making a little bit of a creep back in since the Ruined Crab's been gone for one set. Okay, let's start to give mill a bit more of a fighting chance again. This is pretty bonkers, I think. Tell me what you think in the comments. Next up, we got Disfigure. So this is a reprint. 1 mana instant. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. I think that's pretty cool. Is it as good as Cut Down? Probably not. Depending on how like format defining Guardian of New Benalia becomes or things like that. We'll have to see. In limited, probably going to be very important, but I don't know if it'll take the place of Cut Down, and that's really all it's got going for it right now. Then we've got the Heavyweight Demolisher. So as I said, the uncommon unearth red one from the cycle. Again, you'll be wanting to just put these in the yard somehow. The Rakdos deck, that's going to be all about this as well. Should be just fine. You'll probably play Fable of the Mirror Breaker and just, you know, mill these into your, or discard these into your graveyard. And then you can unearth it for 6, 7, 8. So it's actually more than its casting cost, which is interesting. I saw this earlier and I was like, it's the first one that I've seen where the unearth costs more than it normally costs. At the beginning of your upkeep, tap Heavyweight Demolisher unless you pay 3. That's an 8/6 menace. Eh. 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 There was that other blue one, the Titan of the Deep or something, where you had to pay 3 to untap it. Feels like kind of like that. Meh. Alright, let's see. Next up, we got Arbalest. The Arbalest Engineers. 1 and a Gruul for a 2/2 Human Artificer. When it ETBs, choose 1. Deals 1 damage to any target. Put a +1/+. Okay, so this is not legendary. Finally, something like that. So many legendaries lately. Like, you can actually play, 4 of this in a, who knows. Put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature. It gains trample and haste until end of turn. Sick. Or create a tap Power Stone token. Cool, man. Super cool. Flavor-wise and everything. Look at them like, we're coming to bring stuff that you need in the battle with our little robot cannon guy. Here, pew pew pew, or counters and go, attack, trample. Of course, you can just target yourself, right? So it can also just be a 3/3 trample haste. That also deals 1 damage to something. When it ETBs, that's pretty cool. I think that's a really strong card. I can't wait to play with that one. I don't know if it's taking the place of anything crazy and like, hey, maybe a Naya Humans. Hey? Play this. Put the +1/+1 counter and the trample on your Alana and Helena. And then she puts... Yeah, you see where I'm going. Interesting. Then we've got something in in Italian. The first line of Yotia. Anytime that the first line of Yotia attacks another creature, target creature that you controlled gains +1/+1 until end of turn. And it's got Unearth. It's a 1/1. It's a soldier. Hey. You never know. You never know. Between this and the black one that we saw, that was 3 mana to unearth, that was a 1/2. This one seems better. Nice. Then we've got the Tyrant of Ker's Ridges. Ker Ridges. 6 mana, 4/5 flyer. Whenever it enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to any target. And then you can pay 1 and give it +1/+0 until end of turn, obviously as many times. So it reminds me of the Star Mounts guy that we just rotated away from, but worse. Doesn't have haste, is counterable, not as big, costs the same. Meh. Next up, we got Demolition Field. So I read this already. It's got the same line of text as We're already using right now in standard. Field of Ruin. Exactly the same. Taps for colorless, pay 2, sack it, destroy target non-basic land, and opponent controls that land's controller may search their library for a basic land card, put in there, blah, 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 blah. Same exact thing. But it's just got a different name, Demolition Field. Maybe it's what it used to be called in the original Dominaria, and they're just doing like a callback or something. But it's basically just a reprint of Field of Ruin. Next up, we got another 5 mana enchantment. Like the 5-drop slot in black is like, whew. We got that command just a couple days ago. We've got Gix in Saga. We've got Invoke Despair. Now this thing. But, pardon me, I'm really parched. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, that player loses 5 life unless they discard a card. 5 life. That is a painful quandary. Wow, that's good, man. That's really good. I can't say anything more than that. I almost wish it just cost 6. So you can, you know, also play invokes and stuff. I just don't know what's better, because the turn 5 in black control, like where this would probably go best in, is starting to look very, very clogged up. So it's going to be interesting to see which is best and which goes in which one better. But this is a very, very strong effect, obviously, especially at that point in the game. The opponent like can't afford not to have cards in hand, but they also can't afford to lose 5 lives. So you're going to be putting them into a very painful quandary. I like that. I like that a lot. Next up, we got Blanchwood Armor. 3 mana, aura. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each forest you control. Aha! That's actually not terrible. Like put it on some trample creature that you have in a mono green deck and just like that's actually not terrible. 3 mana. I wish it was 2. Oh, 1. Make it mythic and 1 mana. That would be bonkers. Anyway, I think that might see some play. It's always tough to tell with these auras. Most of them don't see any play in standard. Not for a long time. Not since Theros, really, has there been like fairly playable enchantment auras. Still haven't seen many elves, which has got me a bit worried. I was hoping on more elves. But anyway, I think apparently they're like most of them, it'll come in the last act and they're coming further down in spoiler season. There will be some elves for sure. I just wanted to see more for the Elf Lord. And no, not many goblins yet. But next up, we've got Sardian Cliff Stomper. 2 mana, 04 Minotaur Barbarian. And as long as it is your turn and you control 4 or more mountains, it gets +X/+O, where X is the number of mountains you control. That's pretty decent. No? I mean, mono red just wanna attack you, you play this on like turn 5 or something. Give it haste. It's a 5/4. You know, just like nice curve fillers things. I think that's pretty good. And then, you know, it becomes back an 04 if you're ever in blocking mode. It's still a fairly decent blocker. I think that's pretty decent. Next up, we got Corrupt. 6 mana sorcery in black. Whenever deals damage to any target equal to the number of swamps you control, you gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. Reminding me a little bit of March of Otherworldly Light. Or no, of Wretched Sorrow, the black one. Where, you know, usually when you're paying 7 mana, you're gaining 6 life. So here you'll be at least, you should be gaining, if it's playing in a mono black deck, you'll be gaining 6 life. So this, with March, you'd pay the 1 plus 5, you gain 5 life. Very similar. But this is to any target. So you can also go face. That could be really nice finisher for some black control deck. Just like put all your swamps down, remove everything, kill everything, invoke despair stuff, and then eventually just corrupt them to the face for whatever. 8. That's pretty nice, actually. Definitely going to try that out. And going back to my point at the very beginning about mono black, I would prefer to stay more in a control, even though mono black aggro sounds fun, and it has been actually. We've just kind of been playing It's been like aggro, controlly, mid-rangey, which is why mono black's so good, because you can play kind of control in an aggro deck. But I would hope, yeah, I don't know. I prefer it if it's mono black's more like your control type of stuff. That's what I'm more used to. Destroy all your stuff, play some planeswalkers, sweep the board. Now without the meat hook, we still haven't gotten a good replacement. Next up, we got Flow of Knowledge. 5 mana, instant, blue. Draw a card for each island you control. Then just card 2. Wow. So in a mono blue deck, you play this on turn 5, draw 5, discard 2. That's really pretty decent. I wonder if it'll see any play, though, compared to things like Deluge and what have you. Maybe like a one-off. But there's the new X spell from Dominaria United, that you can flash in if X is 3 or whatever. Silver Scrutiny. I think that one is probably better. Lay Down Arms. 1 mana, white sorcery. Exile target creature with mana value less than or equal to the number of planes you control. Okay, nice. There's all of this, like the swamps, islands, and that's cool. It's been a while since we've had that. Target creature with mana value less than or equal to the number of planes you control. You give the opponent 3 life. Fine. But at some point in the game, this could be like, just exile a 7-drop for 1 mana. I think that's pretty decent. I think that's definitely going to see some play. Next up, we got Calamity's Wake. Instant speed, white, 2 mana. Exile all graveyards. Here's going to be a staple. IMO, mark my words. Wow. I think that's really good. They'll be yeah, probably more of a sideboard card, depending on how the format develops. But if you're playing against like your Mishra, Unearth, self-mill your artifacts type of a deck, then, or any kind of graveyard thing, like just exile all graveyards for 2 mana, instant speed, and you prevent them from casting non-creature spells this turn. Wow. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Okay, a reprint of Disenchant. Always seems to be one in standard every time. It's like one of those things like Negate, just always there. Next up, Lauren, the Disciple of History. 4 mana, 3/3. Whenever it or another legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Alright. Interesting. It's one of those that, like, it's not obviously busted and doesn't have like an immediate apparent home. But given what I know about the set and what you're going to be doing with your artifacts, discarding them and all these unearthed things and that, maybe then this is pretty good. That stuff you discarded earlier to get a Power Stone token, now you need it back into your hand. Whenever it or another legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, you keep returning those and... Next up, we got Repair and Recharge. I like the art on this one. These little thopters or something coming to pick up this old bot. Return target artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker from your graveyard to the battlefield. For 6. No, for 5. I like that a lot. It's not as good as Invoke Justice. That's all I can say. It's easier to cast, but it's not as good as Invoke Justice. Costs the same mana, but Invoke Justice gives those 4+1/+1 counters. This just gives a Power Stone token. But you can do the same types of permanents with Invoke Justice, so I think... yeah, it's like a poor man's Invoke Justice. Next up, we got Survivor of Corliss. 1 mana, 1/1 human soldier. Another 1 mana soldier. Nice. With First Strike. Nice. Exile it from your graveyard. Scry 2. Nice. Not terrible. Really not that terrible. You probably want that other 1 mana soldier, though, that draws you cards in late game, rather than this guy as your 1-drop in your, you know, future soldier tribal deck. Next up, we got Phalagi, the Archaeologist. 2 mana, 0/3. Common, Human Scout. When it ETBs, you mill 3 cards. You may put a non-creature card from among the cards milled this way into your hand. If you don't, you have to put a +1/+1 counter on it. I like this. That's the second time now. We're like, oh, you whiffed. Oh, okay, I still get something. It's not just like, oh, I whiffed and my whole turn is dead. At least I get a little bit of a value out of a whiff. I quite like that design space. Like, that's 2 cards now that have had that sort of whiff protection inbuilt. Next up, we got Forging. How are we doing here? Oh, we're almost there. We're almost there. I may need to go grab a glass of water. Forging the Anchor. 3 mana, sorcery, blue. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal any number of artifact cards from among them. Top 5, huh? And put the revealed cards into your hand. Put the rest at the bottom of your library in a random order. There's better. There's better. There's better already. In standard now, in Kamigawa and things. We got better cards in this. At instant speed that do better things. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 card. Yeah. Okay, so it's like a bad... you know, the fairy with flash. It's a 1/2. But it costs 2 mana. This is 4 mana. And it doesn't have flying. But yeah, whenever you draw your second card, you put a +1/+1 counter. Meh. Probably pretty decent in limited, I guess, in some decks. We'll have to see. I'm not a huge limited expert. Mightstone's Animation. 4 mana for an aura. Enchant artifact. Okay. When Mightstone's Animation enters the battlefield, draw a card. Cool. And then Enchant artifact is a creature with a base power and toughness 4/4 in it. Okay. So you can make your Power Stone into a 4/4. And draw a card for 4 mana. Cool. Next up, we got the sets. 3 mana counter spell in blue. There's always one. Hey, that's a nice one. That's pretty nice. Instead of Dissipate, instead of Urtai's Scorn, now we've got Urza's Rebuff. Counter target spell, obviously, but then this one, the versatility is tap up to 2 target creatures. I quite like that. If you've already, even especially in best of 3, like if you already got 3 mana counter spells in your, pay 3 counter target spell, like Urtai's Scorn, for example, in your 3-drop slot, in your main board, and then you're playing against aggro, you just swap this one for the other one. Doesn't really change the way the mana curve, nothing, but it's just complete, you can tap down creatures. I quite like that. Next up, Ashnod's Intervention. 1 mana instant. Up until end of turn, target creature gets +2/+1 and gains. When this creature dies or put into exile from the battlefield, return it to its owner's hand. Dang it. I was hoping it would be like a cool feign death type thing. I guess this saves also from Farewell. Feign death only saves against destroy effects where it goes in the graveyard. It's also exile. So that's pretty cool. That's not bad. I like it also for blocking things that would die. Like the Etchings of Kamano. It's pretty frustrating, that card, when it's like all your cheap stuff that they just play with fire and lightning strike just ends up in the exile. Nice. I wonder. Then we've got Disciples of Gix. 6 mana in black for Phyrexian Human. Okay, so these are the guys. Some of these guys have come like from Phyrexia in a time machine or something. Been trying to keep up with the story. 4/4s. When they enter the battlefield, search your library for up to 3 artifact cards, put them into your graveyard, then shuffle. Seems a bit bonkers for 6 mana. I don't know, but we'll have to see how important it is to put certain artifacts into your graveyard on turn 6. Or certain combo enabling whatever shenanigans. Could be good. Then we've got Gix's Caress. 3 mana sorcery. Opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card. You create a tapped Power Stone token. So you see how many spells this is attached onto, that line of text. Going back to my point about us going to be having loads of this for casting these big, stupid, artifact robot things. Oof, I'm so excited. Next up, we got No One's Left Behind. 5 mana sorcery again, but it costs 3 less to cast if you target a creature card with mana value 3 or less. And you return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Cool, like a reanimation spell at 5, like they all are, but you can cast it earlier if you're bringing back a small thing to the battlefield. Okay, this is decent, man. This is decent. It's like already just a normal price for just a normal, bring a thing back to the battlefield. There's plenty of them. But this one, you can do it, for 2 mana. And bring back your Adeline or your, whatever 3-drop. Super cool, I think. Then we've got the Power Stone Fracture. 2 mana black sorcery. As an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice an artifact or creature. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. Nice. Nice. We've already got something like this in standard right now. But I like that this one adds artifact or creature. The one we have right now is called like Bones something, and it has to be a creature. So here you can sack a Power Stone token or something and get rid of a creature or planeswalker. Very nice. Wish it was instant speed. Next up we got Thran Vigil. 2 mana enchantment in black. Cool. Whenever one or more artifacts and or creature cards leave your graveyard during your turn, you put a... See? You see? Going back to the automaton. There's going to be one version of like the automaton deck in every kind of color combination that you can think of coming your way very soon. I cannot wait. This will definitely go in the black. You're sacking your creatures that are artifacts. Play your Iron Apprentice, maybe Rakdos. You play the Iron Apprentice and Surge, Voltage Surge, and you're sacking your artifacts, and then the Urza card gives all your artifacts in your graveyard unearth, so you're unearthing them, and then whenever you do, you put counters on things, and then you get your Urza meld. Oh man, I cannot wait. Super excited for that one. Like Rakdos, aggro, artifact, sack. Whew. Even just saying it makes me excited. Next up, we got the Phalagi Chain Dancer. 4 mana, 2/4, draft chaff. Then we've got Mishra's Domination. 2 mana, enchantment aura, enchant creature, gets +2/+2. Otherwise, it can't block. Okay. So you can enchant the opponent's creature if you want, and then it can't block. Or you enchant your own creature and it gets +2/+2. Meh. Next up, we got Ferric Blast. 4 mana instant. As an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature. Deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to any target. Draw a card. What? 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 Yes! Yes! This is a sick card, man. Holy crap, that is so sick. OMG, I'm like, how is this okay, am I missing something? You got, you know, your big red dumb guy down, whatever, wherever it was. Even just, let's say, this one. Even just this one. Or something. I don't know. Like a big old dumb artifact creature that's a 10/10 or something. And then you just sack it for 4 mana at instant speed when it's getting targeted by the opponent's removal. And it deal 10 damage to the opponent's face and draw a card. What? No, I haven't missed anything. This is just really bonkers, and I cannot wait to break this card. Oh my goodness. To any target just makes me smile. And draw a card. How is this common? Epic. Mwah. Chef's kiss. Next up, Raise to the Ground. 3 mana, sorcery, can't be counted. Nice. Destroy target artifact. If its mana value was 1 or less, draw a card. Okay, cool. Next up, Sibling Rivalry. Gain control of target. Okay, so it's the 4 mana gain control card of the set. There's one in every set. Gain control of the target artifact or creature until end of turn. Untap it. It gains haste until end of turn. In this one, okay, you know, one was making Blood Token, one was making a Clue or something. Now we're playing the Power Stone set. It makes a Power Stone token. Nice. The typical 4 mana, steal your thing, give it haste, attack with it card that every set has. It feels like. Next up, we got Mishra's Research Desk. 1 mana artifact. Cool. Pay 1 mana, tap it. Exile top 2 cards of your library. Okay, no, and you have to sack it. So tap, sack. Exile top 2. Choose 1 until the end of your next turn. You may play that card. Unearth for 2. And then you can just do it all again, but with haste, because then it ends the battlefield. You know, it leaves a... Gives you loads of wiggle room to, like, when you're going to be able to have the mana. So, you know, you're not like, oh my god, typical problems that you have with certain cards like this, where the thing you exile, you don't have the mana for, and then, but you really did actually need that freaking card, and then now it's gone, and you can't get it back. So it's always good with reminding me of like Showdown of the Scalds or the something Reckless Impulse that we have right now in red, where it gives you until the next, or it's even the death trigger from the red Spirit Dragon, that it's until your next turn that you can play the card. Then makes it a lot better, right? Because you untap, add more mana, and then you actually can do it. And then the fact that it has Unearth, and you can just do it all again later in the late game and get another bit of card advantage. I think that's actually deceptively pretty decent. Might be a little bit of a sleeper. It looks like a big swath of commons and things to get through. I will go and get a refill on my glass of water and be right back. Don't go anywhere. Alrighty. Sorry guys, I was just getting ridiculously parched just getting through all of this text. Epic Confrontation. 2 mana, 1 and a green for a sorcery. Target creature you control gets +1/+2 until the end of turn. It fights target creature you don't control. Cool. Another one of these, but sorcery speed makes it terrible. And yeah, +1/+2 is good because you know your booty gets bigger, more of a chance that you survive the trade or whatever. But it would be much better as at instant speed. Might even have made it into an uncommon at that point. Then we've got this Phalagi. So this Phalagi thing is all over the place. This is like the third Phalagi card. This time it's an excavation. You get to create 3 tapped Power Stone tokens, and you gain 3 life for 5 mana. It's actually not bad. Again, if there's some kind of like big, stupid, gigantic artifact creatures that cost 10 mana, and we're trying to ramp into those as quickly as possible, and we still need to mitigate a little bit of life loss from aggro decks that have been coming at our face, and by turn 5, you know, this might be right up your alley. Gain a little bit of life, and set up for like this ridiculous turn 6 where you drop the big haymaker or whatever. Could see some play. We'll have to see. Next up, we got Fog of War. I love the art on this one. You gain 1 life for each creature on the battlefield. Prevent all combat damage that will be dealt this turn by creatures with power 3 or less. That's beautiful, man. That's going to be saving people's asses left, right, and center. Imagine Gruul had access to this or something, you know, like... Definitely some kind of sideboard card as well, like against the Go Wide. Gain 1 life for each creature on the battlefield. Prevent all damage dealt that will be dealt this turn by creatures with power 3 or less. That's going to save your butt, like... in a lot of situations. I wonder. Instant speed, 3 mana. I think this is going to probably see some play. Next up, we got Gaia's Gift. 2 mana instant, green, put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature you control. It gains reach, trample, hexproof, and indestructible. What? Okay, that's another goodie. It doesn't say or. It's all of those. Wow, like Tamio's safekeeping and a shield thing. It's like wow, that's a really good card for those Spell Thief decks. Holy cannoli. Reach, trample, hexproof, and indestructible, and +1/+1. Illuminator Virtuoso is very happy. The trample is ridiculous. The hexproof and indestructible. The +1/+1 counter. Wow, that's a good one. That's going straight away into version 3 serious jank of the IV Spell Thief deck very soon. Next up, we got Tornus's Tinkering. Pardon me. It's also just a great combat trick in like a mono green deck. Give your big guy trample as they go to remove it, and it gets bigger. Sick. Tornus's Tinkering. 4 mana instant. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on a target artifact, creature, or land you control. Untap that permanent. If it isn't a creature, it becomes a 0/0 creature in addition to its other types. Oh, okay. Okay. Nah. Next up, we got third... I just got a little bit lost. Like, that's a ridiculously dumb card. Next up. Third Path Iconoclast. Okay, this might be the signpost uncommon for Izzet. Human Monk. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 colorless soldier. Oh, why did it have to be a monk itself? There we go. Soldier artifacts. Overlapping. Ooh, excitement, excitement. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, so your artifacts, obviously. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. The set is going to be so fire. And it's not legendary like all the other little 2-drops that we got from the last set, so can have multiples of these. I wish it was a soldier too, but still. Soldier artifacts. Epic. Next up, Goblin Firebomb. 1 mana, flashing artifact. Yeah, pay 7, destroy target permanent. But I guess with Power Stone tokens, this could be pretty cool. Destroy target permanent. Can be a land as well. I wonder if you play like 2 of this in your weird control deck with like Karn and sweepers and stuff. I wonder how many Power Stones people are gonna end up having. Like how much ramp are we gonna have to like do normal stuff and then do artifact stuff? So it's gonna feel like 2 turns. 2 different mana pools. Falagi Vanguard is a 4 mana 2/3 first striker. Whenever it or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So, you know, can, when it ETBs, give something +2/+0, and then the following turn give it +2/+0 when something else ETBs. I like those types of things where it's kind of like Reckless Stormseeker, where like you can either, you know, give it to yourself, but in this case there's no haste, but or, you know, you give it to the smaller thing that came before you to make it so that it actually can attack, and then the next turn you can attack with the thing, but then you give it to the next thing that enters the battlefield, and you know what I'm saying. Very perfect picture for it, like a squad of guys all trying to fight together. Next up, we got the Suchi Cave Guard. 8 mana, 8/8 vigilance with ward 4. When it dies, add 8 colorless. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana's wow. Sick. That is sick. That's a cool one. You can reanimate it, you can cheat it into play, you can use your freaking cost reduction guys for artifacts, of which there are plenty already in standard. More on that in a couple days following the end of spoiler season, probably. But we've got Thran Power Suit, 2 mana equipment, gets +1/+1 for each aura. Ooh, nice. Nice. These are never good, really, but I like this kind of card, you know, where it's like it's just +1/+1 if it's just it, but then the more you put, it's like exponential. So the more auras and equipments are on a specific thing, it gets more +1/+1, and it gets ward 2, which I think is pretty decent. That might actually be not half bad. We still got some of those people trying to do equipment decks, and some cards that were printed that support the archetype in Dominaria United. Maybe it'll be the time. It's the uncommon Boros guy. There's one of that like fetches and that makes all vehicles crew for 1. We still haven't played with that in standard. We might have to do some serious janky stuff before the new set drops, as I scrape the bottom of the barrel. But next up, we got Tukazia's Dig Site. Colorless land. You can pay 3 to surveil 1. Nice. Nice. By the way, you might have noticed they did this like errata where they like changed this. It's now become like a permanent part of the game. I think it's just taking the place of Scry. No, what am I saying? But anyway, look at the top card of your library. You may put that card into your graveyard. Okay, so it's not like, yeah, scrying is into the bottom of your library. This is into your graveyard. So it's now surveil is a permanent thing, which you'll be finding written like this, like other like ward or whatever. Next up, Mishra's Onslaught. 4 mana instant, choose 1. Create 2 colorless soldiers artifact creature tokens. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn. Sick. Very sick. Don't know if it'll see any play, but I like these type of combat tricks. Maybe if it was like 3 mana or 2 mana, then it would have been uncommon, and then it would have been freaking playable as fuck. And now it's just meh. Probably just draft chaff, but you know, earlier you play it for the 1 and you start building these little 1/1 armies, and then you've got all your other artifact synergies going on because they're soldier artifacts, and maybe you've got your soldier lord, and then eventually they all attack. Your opponent just like, oh, whatever, they're just 1/1s, and then you cast this second one that you had top decked recently and give them all +2/+0 and win the game. It's a nice little combat trick. Then we've got the Obstinate Baloth. Another Baloth. 4 mana, 4/4. Typical green stuff. It's a beast. So this will trigger that guy we saw earlier. What's his name? The Simic Artificer. When the ETBs gain 4 life, if a spell or an ability an opponent controls causes you to discard Obstinate Baloth, put it into the battlefield instead of putting it into your graveyard. Hey, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Opponent plays their Liliana. +1s. You discard this, it just goes into your battlefield. Not terrible, but it's just a 4 mana 4/4. Then we've got another aura. A little bit more aura action than usual. 1 mana, green 1. Gives trample. Finally. That's actually very nice. When it's put into graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. That's very nice. That's very playable. I'm not sure where I would play it yet, but that's decent as half. You know, remember, enchantmenting something is like modifying, so it fits with your modified stuff. All your enchantment decks. I think this could definitely be pretty decent. Even Ivy and Illuminator Virtuoso. Just put this on the Virtuoso. Ivy gets it too. Give them both +2/+0 and trample. Nice. Next up, we've got... Ooh. Interesting. A rare land that's dual, that isn't the Pain land. When it ETBs, you may reveal a soldier card from your hand. Aha! That was that Azorius soldier guy. You may reveal the flying one. You may reveal a soldier card from your hand. Fortified Beach enters the battlefield tapped unless you reveal a soldier card this way, or you control a soldier. Wow, man. That is sick. Pay 5, tap, soldiers you control get +1. Dude, that is sick that is a sick card. Just think about it for a second, right? When it ETBs, you can either be controlling a soldier or you can reveal one from your hand. And then it'll remain untapped. And you can tap for white or blue. And then, you know, you can dump your Power Stone tokens into the activation cost. And give all your guys +1/+1 until end of turn. I think that's pretty nice. Very nice. I really like the design. Next up, we got Brotherhood's End. 3 mana sorcery, choose 1. Deals 3 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. Nice. A little micro sweep action in red. We've been needing one. I like that it's 3 damage. It's been just a little bit this seismic wave right now. It's like 3 to the 1 thing and 1 to the rest or something, and it's just not quite enough. And then the next thing is burn down the house, and that kills your own planeswalkers half the time. This one, you know, you can have your planeswalkers have a bit more than 3 loyalty, and you're not too worried about playing this in like your Jaya, Chandra, mono red spells type deck or whatever. And you can destroy all artifacts with mana value 3 or less. So all the opponent's Power Stones. Hey, I can see why that's rare. That's a good card. That's a very good card. That's definitely going to see us some significant play. And I hope that means like big red or like red mid-range becomes a thing. Because that's another one that I like, where like, similar to what I was saying earlier about mono black, where like it's usually a control archetype, and it's nice when like, ooh, suddenly there's a viable like mono black aggro deck, which just seems to be, you know, usually aggro is like mono red and yeah. Mono white to a certain extent like has that thing as like an aggro color. And then there come cards that make it so that finally you can play this color in a different way. So like big red or red control or red mid-range, not just playing RDW, go fast, haste creatures, cheap spells. It's all I'm all for that. And Brotherhood End seems like it would fit really well in a deck like that. Next up, we've got Obliterating Bolt. Oh, sorry, one with the multiverse. 8 mana enchantment. Mythic blue enchantment for 8 mana. Wow, there's that like 7 mana or 6 mana blue artifact we just looked at. So you may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may play lands and cast spells from the top of your library. Once during each of your turns, you may cast a spell from your hand or the top of your library without paying its mana cost. Yeah, I mean, that's why it costs 7. 8. That's why it costs 8. I mean, it feels a bit win-more-y. Like, unless you can find a way to cheat this into play much sooner, by the time you've got into 7 mana, and you're doing this kind of stuff on turn 7, playing a big dumb friggin' enchantment that does nothing, probably the turn it enters the battlefield, then you're probably already winning, and you could have just played another Hullbreaker Horror or whatever. Oh my god, I was just talking about this. Oh my goodness, I've just got lost reading the next card. I was just talking about this yesterday, I think, in yesterday's deck tech. Like a 2 mana thing that does 4. It would have been amazing if it was to any target, but this is a 2 mana thing that does 4 damage. Thank God, we've been needing that for a while. The last thing was Thundering Rebuke, and it's gone. Creature or Planeswalker, and it's Exile as well. Poof, that is bonkers. That's a much needed removal spell for red. I'm very happy to see it. I'm going to hate being on the receiving end, but at least it's sorcery speed. Like, Lightning Strike, 3 damage, was already dealing with so many things. This is a really important card. It's going to change ways things are built, and you're going to be expecting this on your 3-drop. That's like, this can deal with Adeline now. There's nothing in red that could just Adeline, mono white, turn 3, drop an Adeline. Now, with also the, maybe you have 2 play with fire, you get your Adeline off the board, the opponent plays a freaking Sarah Paragon the next turn, cast the Adeline again from the graveyard. Obliterating Bolt, exiled, cannot be brought back with Sarah Paragon. Bye-bye. I think this is very important. Super good card to have for a healthy format, I think. So happy that it's back. Had to be sorcery speed, of course. Mechanized Warfare, another rare enchantment in red. Cool, man. If a red or artifact source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage +1 instead. I'm thinking of the Dragon Charge Reactor. The artifact that whenever an artifact ETBs, again, gonna go so good with automaton and whatnot. Whenever an artifact ETBs, it gets a charge counter, and then you can pay 4, sack it. I think that could go pretty well. I've got a deck lined up, probably going to be the one that we'll see tonight or tomorrow after this episode of Spoiler Talk. That's artifacts and enchantments matters. I can't wait for you to see this one. It's got some potential. This might actually be perfect in that. Next up, we got Thopter Architect. 4 mana, 2/3 Human Artificer. Whenever it ETBs, target creature gains, blah, blah, blah. Nah. This one. Going back to what I was saying about Celestia, artifacts matters, +1/+1 counters, aggro. Oof. This with the automaton, with the other guy with the X in the mana cost. This is a 3 mana, it's the green rare unearth artifact. it's a simian simulacrum, so an ape robot. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you put 2+1/+1 counters on a target creature you control. So you can pick it or something else. It's so if you choose it, it would enter the battlefield as a 4/3 for 3 that has all these relevant creature types, and you can unearth it for only 1 extra mana. So even if they kill it straight away, maybe you put those if you're worried about it being killed straight away. I love that. Like you've got 2 creatures on board, the opponent's holding up Infernal Grasp, and you know it's an Infernal Grasp. And he's like decided to pass the turn and hold up the grasp to see what you're going to play next is going to be more important to remove than the 2 smaller things that you've already got on the battlefield. And you played this, and you have that decision of like, am I going to put those counters onto me? And then the opponent hits the simulacrum before the counters are applied with Infernal Grasp or something, or even a cut down in this case, because it's cut downable. So instead of putting the counters, if you know or suspect that he has either Infernal Grasp or cut down, instead of putting the +1/+1 counters on it, you put them on 2 other creatures. So you spread out those threats, and then if he just takes out on the 1, you're still left with the Simian Simulacrum, which is a 2/1. It's not terrible, and one of the others still got bigger. Okay, no, it's put 2 +1/+1 counters on a target creature. Okay, but still, you see where I'm going with that. It's kind of similar to that decision you had to make with the Luminarch Aspirin at the beginning of your combat. It's like, do I put whichever thing I put the counters on? It's probably the thing that they're going to target with their removal. Interesting. And the unearth for 1, then the very next turn you just do it again. They just get rid of it straight away. The next turn you play a land, do it straight away again, and you keep growing the automatons. And then you've got enough mana at that point for the big X guy. I cannot wait for this like Celestia artifacts thing, guys. Oh my goodness. Next up, we've got the uncommon red prototype artifact. It's a 1/3 for 3 with flying. And you can pay 2 and it gets +1/+0. You can of course do that however many times you like, because it's not a tap thing. And that's a great place to dump your power stones into, by the looks of it. It's actually not terrible. And then you can just flicker it, or cast it later in the game. You get a 5/5 that does the same thing. That's really not that terrible. That's not a terrible power stone sink. 3 mana 1/3, and then you can like pump it the next turn when it attacks and make it into a 2/3. Maybe pump it 2 times. Gets in for and then you can just flicker it, and then you get a 5/5, and then you're just dumping all your power stones and just boop, 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 make it huge. Okay. Now we're skipping all of this, and the next one is a reconstructed Thopter, 3 mana artifact creature Thopter. It's a 2/1. It's got Unearth 2. Meh. Next up, Siege Veteran. Another soldier, another 3 mana. It's a 2/2, and ooh, I've seen this one. Oh my lordy. It's like a fixed Luminarch Aspirant. Okay, listen to me. This card is going to see buttload of play. At the beginning of it's 1 extra mana. It's a 2/2, same like Luminarch Aspirant, but at the beginning of a combat on your turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature you control. Whenever another non-token soldier you control dies, you create a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature token. Oh. I like this card, man. And I'm sure I'm going to hate it before its time and standard is done. Oh, man, that is bunkers. I can already again, automaton. Automaton turn 2, you play this on turn 3. Okay, no, because these anything that has like artifact ETB triggers, like the Dragon Spark Reactor I was just talking about. Whenever you get a little colorless soldier, you get the +1/+1 counter on the Dragon Charge Reactor. And then you can start putting those +1/+1 counters on the little 1/1s that you just made. I think that's... yeah, they made it a little bit more expensive than the Illuminative, than Luminarch Aspirant, but it does the exact same thing, but a bit better, because then you get the little 1/1s. Skip. I recognize a lot of art here. I've played with a lot of these cards back in the day. Yeah, skip. And right here at the end, we've got... We'll do one more refresh to see if anything's come out in the meantime. But we've got Battlefield Butcher. 3 mana for a 1/4 human soldier. You can pay 5, tap it. Each opponent loses 2 life. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each creature card in your graveyard. Hey, that's not terrible. That's not terrible. You can have this cost 0 and you just tap it. Opponent loses 2 life. Because it's all colorless. So if you've got 5 creatures in your graveyard, you just tap this. Drain for 2. And you can have multiples of these on the battlefield. And they're not that hard to remove with 4 toughness. I mean, they're not that easy to remove with 4 toughness. That's honestly not terrible. And last but not least, we've got the Thopter Mechanic. A 2 mana, 2/1 human artificer. Whenever you draw your second card each turn. Okay, we've seen this already. Oh no, we haven't. There was another thing that's okay. Another card that says that. That's pretty cool. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. When it dies, you create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. I wish he had flying. If he had flying, definitely playable. Alright, quick little refresh action. F5. No, nothing. Alright. That was a long one. Thank you all so much for bearing with me through it. I, had to catch up. So it's going to be a humongous upload. I know not everybody watches these, especially not all the way to the end. But like I've said many times, and I will continue to do so, I love doing spoiler talk. This is a thing that I enjoy doing a lot. It really helps with my process, the way I absorb all of these new... I mean, essentially, if you really need to master standard or any format or any meta, you need to know all of the good played cards off by heart, what their names are, how much they cost, what color they're in, blah, 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 blah. And it's like reading lines. I used to do a lot of acting when I was younger for stage. It's the first wave of like applying it into your memory banks. It starts to get my brewing juices flowing, and hopefully those of you who do watch enjoy it and find some of my takes and insights helpful to help you get your brewing juices flowing so that we can get cracking as soon as the set drops on Arena on November 15th. But that is going to be it for this extra long episode of Spoiler Talk. I will see you all a little bit later with another fresh brew. And until then, this is Lone Fox from the BrewLab signing out. Peace, y'all.